Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters here on France 24. I'm Mark Owen. In this edition, French healthcare in crisis. Overworked doctors and nurses, underfunded hospitals. The image of the French health system as a world leader is seriously under threat. Many are questioning why they ever came into the job. Many still deeply committed, though, to helping others, that they stay in spite of all the pressures. An act of violence, for instance, is carried out in French hospitals every 30 minutes. 20,000 jobs have been cut across the board over the past 15 years. But targets are becoming more and more pressing and urgent. Overtime working, then, commonplace. And it goes unpaid. Unions say the collective back payment owed to their members amounts to €7 billion for the past 5 years. Who's listening to the plight of the doctors and nurses and that of the patients? Well, we shadowed health workers for our report and met the people that they help. Their dedication in the face of growing problems is admirable. But you're left wondering how much more they can give, how much more they can take. This report by Alexandre Renard, Melina Uwe and Haxim Eisbelkin.
I didn't choose this job thinking one day I might be dangerous to patients.
We can't treat people properly anymore. Patients are in danger.
The institution is destroying us. It's preventing us from doing our jobs. Some people are even driven to suicide.
We're not in a good state, but no one's listening.
In the winter of 2016, everyone from doctors and nurses to hospital directors took to the streets of Paris, refusing to stay quiet any longer.
We've got pain bombs, we've got banners, we've got everything.
This care assistant is striking, but he's also on his way to work. Even during strike action, hospital workers are obliged to turn up for shifts. He and his colleagues are planning a protest stunt at the hospital, and anonymity is key.
We're being treated more and more aggressively, so we need to bring the fight to them. We need to harden up.
Healthcare workers have been planning a nighttime protest for weeks now. Tonight at 2:15 in the morning, it's the time.
Question de survie pour nous, pour nos malades, pour l'être humain. C'est une question de survie pour l'être humain.
We chose this career in order to help people in need, to care for ill people as well as we can. We didn't choose it to be forced to do a slapdash job. We're being very careful because the hospital has security cameras and the guards are watching them. They're under orders to watch out for us.
Hospital workers have been handed new, fuller timetables. Management insists it's the best way forwards. Employees, however, feel they're being exploited.
We're leaving bags in front of the room where the decisions that concern us are taken. It's our way of getting our message to the directors, of showing them how angry we are, that we're still mobilized and up for a fight.
Minutes later, everyone's back at work. Comforting and reassuring patients is a large part of nursing.
Vous n'arrivez pas à dormir? Non? Voilà. Allez, je vous laisse. À tout à l'heure.
Not so easy when your heart is no longer in it.
I used to love my job, but the more I do it, the more I ask myself why I don't go off and do something else. We're just pawns in someone else's game.
In theory, each unit consists of 1 nurse and 2 care assistants. That's the minimum safety requirement, but it rarely works out like that. There's a chronic lack of healthcare professionals. Employees are often moved from one unit to another over the course of one shift.
The night service planners have just called to say that they need someone to transfer to another area. That means I need to switch services. So I'm leaving my colleague alone here to go and help the other team.
How do you feel?
A bit angry.
It creates a lot of stress for us. It's a vast unit, which means we're running about everywhere to be able to respond to all the calls.
1 nurse and 1 care assistant for 22 patients. That's not how it's meant to be, but it happens all the time.
What's the overriding message to public hospital workers? Get people better and shut up. Yes, shut up. We're meant to accept so much, even insults. The angry patients, the lack of respect. There are patients who might physically attack you or spit on you. They can do anything, and we can do nothing in response. The patient stays, and you have to look after them.
There's a violent incident every 30 minutes in French hospitals. When these workers signed up for public service, they knew they'd never get rich and that the hours could make family life difficult. But they assumed that would be the full extent of their sacrifice.
In a way, we're ashamed, whether we admit it or not individually. That's what pushes a lot of employees into depression. That depression doesn't just come on its own, it's because we're not proud of what we're doing. It's because we find it hard to look at ourselves in the mirror. I would not go to my own hospital if I needed treatment.
These sorts of concerns are most prevalent among workers at the APHP, the body that oversees public hospitals in Paris. In charge of 39 hospitals in the department, the APHP is also the region's biggest employer and the country's largest hospital body. We're not allowed to film inside, and employees rarely speak to journalists. But Marianne is. She lives in a small studio just outside Paris. Last summer, work-related stress led her to a nervous breakdown.
I worked the whole summer, and when it came to September, I was extremely tired, and there was still so much work. My holidays were approaching, but I just cracked.
Over the summer, her hospital had cut 12 beds, but even so, her team was exhausted and overstretched. Healthcare workers report regularly not having enough time to eat or even drink. They say it's dangerous for them and their patients.
I went to see my doctor on Tuesday morning. She could see I was exhausted. I was crying. She said to me, "You can't go back to work like that. You need to stop. Otherwise, you'll be completely exhausted. If you stay, you'll just get too ill."
Marianne has decided to speak out about her experience, not, she says, to tarnish the hospital's image, but rather to sound the alarm and to prevent other hospital workers from becoming as ill as she did.
I chose to work in the public sector because I believe in its values. We look after everyone, and I want to be able to give back to my country. I went to school, to university, and this was my way of giving back. I wanted to work for the state.
The French state pays new nurses like Marianne a monthly salary of 1,500 euros net. It's not enough to cover even her most basic needs.
The cost of living is going up, but my salary isn't. You get to a point where it just becomes impossible. In my fridge, there are some eggs, a camembert, some pasta, and that's it. And I still got 6 days before my next payment comes through. And there's nothing left in my fridge. How am I going to eat for the next 6 days?
The idea that health professionals' work is forcing them to neglect their own health may seem absurd, but care workers and hospital administrators alike insist it's the reality. Recent reforms have forced hospitals to organise themselves more like businesses, where the budget is king. For this diabetes expert, the public health service itself is under threat.
How are doctors required to behave as far as ethics are concerned? They need to find the right treatment for the patient, to do everything they can for him or her, at the lowest cost to the collective, because our system of social security is essentially a system of collective finance. Now the system is to treat patients to the best of our ability, but that's as long as it's worth it for the hospital, and that's also how it works in the private sector.
For those in charge of the public purse, it's not about how hospitals can make money, but rather about how they can lose less. And the easiest way of cutting costs is to reduce the amount of time each patient is entitled to.
When a head nurse tells her fellow health workers that they need to reduce the quality of their work, that they should abandon that quest for quality, that they shouldn't ask questions and should just do what they're told, well, the person who hears that is stunned. Abandon your quest for quality. How can you even say that to a healthcare professional?
Since the end of the 1990s, the message in France has been clear. You can put a price on health, with hospitals increasingly treated like factories that churn out medical procedures. We head to one of the country's 1,500 public hospitals in Fontainebleau to find out what that looks like. Here, 12-hour shifts are the norm, although this doctor is doing a double shift. His unit consists of 2 emergency doctors and their 2 trainees. But when there's an outside emergency to deal with, there's just one doctor left to deal with all the other patients.
All of a sudden, my workload's multiplied by 3 because I have my patients, I'm looking after my intern's patients, and the patients of the ambulance doctor who also takes their intern with them. So it's up to me to look after all those patients, and of course, we're not meant to forget about any of them.
Bonjour, je suis le médecin, monsieur. Je vais regarder si vous le permettez.
Non.
Non? Vous voulez pas être examiné?
Qu'est-ce que tu veux regarder, toi?
Vos mains, voir s'il y a des plaies, s'il faut vous occuper de vous.
This drunk man has been arrested for behaving aggressively in public. He's injured and needs medical attention before being taken to a cell to sober up. It's not an unusual case. Public hospitals have to deal with everyone who comes through their doors, whatever their complaint and however many patients there already are. Stéphane, a nurse, assesses each case at the door. 7 years ago, he was seeing an average of 40 patients a day. Today, that figure's shot to 90.
Accident and emergency units have X-rays, labs, doctors available 24/7. This makes it very easy to come here and to get all those exams done very quickly, to get a diagnosis very quickly, and to get a prescription.
In France, just 15% of patients who go to A&E are actually hospitalized. Everyone else leaves the same day, which means the service is being stretched by people who don't urgently need medical attention. Not to mention the reams of paperwork each patient generates. Trainee doctor Caroline explains.
This guy was really bleeding. And someone said, wait, Caroline, you need to fill in these papers because that medicine is really expensive and you need to justify why you're using it. So you're given a form with that carbon sheet. It's just a joke. And then you need to stick the sticker on, the one with the big barcode. You put that there. Look at me, I'm a trainee. But I'm already considering a career change.
It's a real challenge. Public hospital directors need to not only attract doctors, but keep them too. As for the financial balancing act, directors are faced with a near impossible task. The French population is growing and aging. Doctors are avoiding inner-city jobs, and political decisions need to be respected. But still, everyone's right to decent healthcare must be guaranteed.
Every day I receive contradictory directives. Employees' well-being is paramount. Patients need to be looked after properly. But we also need to save money. It starts to get a little complicated.
It's a challenge recognized by the vice president of the APHP Supervisory Board. Bernard Jomier, himself a doctor, thinks that it's time for hospitals to go back to their original mission.
What we're lacking in the hospital system is a real understanding of what the role of a hospital is in the wider context of the healthcare system. Take, for example, emergencies. Right now we're asking hospitals to deal with all that, whereas in fact, GPs should be looking after a proportion of those cases. The rules concerning hospitals and GPs need to be clear, and that's when the state needs to take responsibility and start properly financing public hospitals.
In the last 4 years, the government saved €3.5 billion through changes to hospital funding. And 70% of those savings have come from salaries, any hospital's biggest outgoing. This collective of employees from 3 Parisian hospitals wants the world to know.
As we say, they've gnawed at the bone, and now they're gnawing at the marrow. And by gnawing at that marrow, they are undermining your safety, the quality of care.
They're not replacing people who retire, so we're being abandoned. Replacement teams are getting smaller. Since the beginning of the strike, I've had colleagues who've had to stop working because they were too stressed. We're mobilizing again for the sake of our right to a family life, and it's worrying them.
The objective of this commando operation, reaching the APHP headquarters to confront the organization's director, Martin Hirsch.
We are so tired, we can't rest. We get stress fractures. I broke a bone in my leg, but that's no reason to surrender. I'm going to see Mr. Hirsch to let him know just how unhappy we are.
It's 9 a.m. in Paris, and the group has arrived. It's the middle of a meeting. But these protesters aren't going to wait. Around the table, the APHP management team and a number of hospital unions, although the only person they're here to see is Martin Hirsch.
Pour que tout le monde le sache, ils ont rendez-vous à 16h30, il y a une réunion à 16h30 avec le directeur des ressources humaines. Voilà.
Mais c'est pas vous? Ah non, on ne fait pas un rendez-vous avec vous.
Hirsch declines any unforeseen meeting with our protesters, but the silence has been broken, with both the protesters' boss and politicians now unable to ignore their concerns much longer.
Our report on the crisis in the French healthcare system. You can see it again via our website, france24.com. Thanks for watching, reporters, and stay with us here on France 24.